Chapter 355, Outside the Palace. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. Yanwu City had a total of 3 walls, named the Major Wall, the Internal Wall, and the Palace Wall. In terms of defensive power, the Major Wall was the strongest. After hundreds of years' reinforcement, the wall was high and thick. What's more, they had even invited the array masters from the Federation of Inscription to set over 100 defender arrays. Although the Palace Wall, which defended the palace, was not very high, the number of defending arrays and attacking arrays was more than that of the Major Wall. Particularly, the Dragon Turtle Holy Armor Array, a 4th class array, which was 70% defensive power and 30% attacking. Once the array was started up, the whole palace would be covered. Even a warrior in the Fish Dragon realm would find it difficult to break through. Inside each array tower on the top of the palace wall, there was an array master from the black market. Under their joint efforts, the palace defending array was finally activated. Bam! A 333-meter light column shot out from each array tower and pierced through the clouds. After that, lines of arrays appeared on the 4 palace walls and 8 palace doors and turned into a spider web-like light screen, covering the entire Yanwu city. Looking down from the palace, the array was like a huge turtle crouching down on the ground. It looked like a big blue dragon was tangled around its neck, with the dragon head resting on its back. Seeing the palace defending array was activated, Zhang Tangai finally calmed down. With the help of the palace defending array, Zhang Yuochen had to withdraw no matter how powerful he was. It would be better if he tried to break through the palace defending array, then Zhang Tangai could seize the chance to kill him with the help of the array. Zhang Yuochen, let's see what you can do now. Zhang Tangai grinned coldly. The palace defending array has always been strictly controlled by the Commandery Prince. If Zhang Tangai did not break into the palace with masters from the Square Commandery and kill the array master in advance, the palace would not have fallen so quickly. A commandery, or even an inferior commandery's defensive power could be very strong. The Square Commandery Prince ran to the north gate and stared at Zhang Tangai above. He shouted from the distance, "Zhang Tangai, open the array and let me in. Quick!" Zhang Tangai gave him a cold and contemptuous look and said, "Elder Huo, once you were the 3rd master in the Square Commandery. How could even you fail to fight against Zhang Yuochen now? If the young master knew of this, he will be very disappointed." The Square Commandery Prince's name was Huo Danzu. Since he was very powerful in the black market of Omen Ridge, he was made an elder. Hearing Zhang Tangai's words, Square Commandery Prince's heart sank. Square Commandery Prince never liked Zhang Tangai. He thought his cultivation was much higher than Zhang Tangai's, so he did not want to listen to him. Just because of this, they looked to be quite friendly with each other on the surface, but they both bore grudges in private. The Square Commandery Prince did not expect Zhang Tangai to revenge him by blocking him outside the palace defending array at such a crucial moment. Zhang Yuochen also arrived at the gate. He stopped behind the Square Commandery Prince and said, with blood dripping down his sword, "Where are you going now, Square Commandery Prince?" The Square Commandery Prince looked back at Zhang Yuochen. He was only a young man about 20 years old. But, at this moment, in the Square Commandery Prince's eyes, he was more like a god of death gradually approaching. "Zhang Tangai, you're doing me harm on purpose." The Square Commandery Prince gnashed his teeth together in anger. He glanced at Zhang Tangai coldly and said, "If the young master knows this, he won't pardon you." Zhang Tangai sneered. He thought to himself, the Square Commandery Prince may be somebody in Omen Ridge, but he was nothing the moment he stepped out of Omen Ridge. A person like Di Yi would never care about him. Zhang Tangai believed that, even if Di Yi knew this, he would not say anything. After all, he was much more valuable than the Square Commandery Prince. Zhang Tangai said loudly, "Elder Huo, you are a famous martial arts master, and Zhang Yuochen is no match for you. I think you'd better give full play to your remarkable skills and slaughter Zhang Yuochen. At that time, I'll definitely ask the young master to record your meritorious deed." The Square Commandery Prince was furious. He did not want to talk to Zhang Tangai anymore, so he turned around and stared at Zhang Yuochen. Indeed, Zhang Tangai was a sinister man, but his words made sense. The Square Commandery Prince thought that if he could kill Zhang Yuochen, he would definitely receive great credit. He was in the final state of the heaven realm, while Jiang Yuochen had just entered the heaven realm. If he risked his life, there might be a chance for him to kill Jiang Yuochen. With his will growing stronger and stronger, the vigor coming out of the Square Commandery Prince also grew stronger. The bronze halberd on his back shivered greatly, shattered the cloth and flew into his hands. Conqueror halberd. Holding the halberd with both hands, the Square Commandery Prince stood there with his legs spread apart. Suddenly, he waved the halberd and the heaven and earth spiritual chi stirred. He performed an opening posture as if the halberd and himself were combined together. Pow! One end of the conqueror halberd struck on the ground. It made a loud noise and left deep cracks on the ground. This halberd was a 9th level genuine martial arms. It had been the weapon of the Square Commandery Prince for decades, by which countless famous masters were killed. The Square Commandery Prince's genuine chi was very profound, which activated the inscriptions of the fire series in the Conqueror halberd. The halberd was covered with fire immediately and an illusory image of the fire battle lord in armor was formed. Birds reaching the clouds. This martial technique was called the Wind and Cloud halberd skill, which was a spiritual stage superior class martial technique. This halberd skill contained 36 moves. Once it was practiced to succeed, the warrior could split rivers and mountains and pierce the clouds and sky. It was one of the most important martial mysteriums in the Square Commandery. But the Square Commandery only owned 22 moves. In other words, this martial mysterium was incomplete, which made it difficult for the warrior to master the skill. Of course, even though it was incomplete, when it was performed by a master like the Square Commandery Prince, its power was still startling. One blow turned into a fire cloud and came down from above. A heat wave blew in across his face. Jiang Yuochen did not dodge. Instead, he rushed forward. Blue genuine chi poured out of his body and formed a celestial body shield around him. He dashed through the fire cloud and slashed toward the Square Commandery Prince's wrist. The Square Commandery Prince did not expect Jiang Yuochen's sword technique would be so profound. It was only one simple slash, but his spiritual stage superior class halberd technique was broken. This sword technique turned the foul and rotten into the rare and ethereal. The Square Commandery Prince immediately changed his move. He turned his arm and stabbed again. The flames condensed into one point and came right toward Jiang Yuochen's chest. Jiang Yuochen moved his feet and appeared on the left side of the Square Commandery Prince. He slammed on the Square Commandery Prince's head with his palm. The Square Commandery Prince sensed palm strength rushing toward him, so he blocked with his halberd. Pow! The Square Commandery Prince retreated 7 steps because of the strike. Then, Jiang Yuochen ran forward again. He pinched his right thumb into a finger sword and pointed toward the front. A cold blue sword wave flew out of his fingertip. Pow! The sword wave struck precisely on the Square Commandery Prince, but it was blocked by Square Commandery Prince's celestial body shield. Square Commandery Prince was not hurt, but he retreated another step. Jiang Yuochen did not give the Square Commandery Prince any chance to rest. Immediately, he slashed out the second sword wave. The Square Commandery Prince's celestial body shield was finally broken, and the sword wave struck on the Square Commandery Prince's body. The Square Commandery Prince grunted. His robe at the front of his chest was torn apart by the sword chi. The Square Commandery Prince himself was also badly wounded. White ribs could be seen through his bloody chest. Pow! The Square Commandery Prince fell on the ground, but he refused to acknowledge his defeat. So he threw his conqueror halberd at Jiang Yuochen like an arrow. At the same time, he released his martial soul and mobilized the spiritual chi between heaven and earth. Above him, a huge fire vortex formed. Pow! Jiang Yuochen slashed and hit the conqueror halberd away. Then, he struck out another sword wave and turned it into a bowl-sized sword chi light column, attacking right at the Square Commandery Prince, who was currently pulling together his power. The Square Commandery Prince's martial soul pushed with both hands and struck out with their huge fire vortex. In just a second, Jiang Yuochen's sword wave was devoured by the fire vortex. The fire vortex kept rotating and became bigger and bigger. It reached a diameter of 20 meters, then it blew up the slates on the ground and melted them into lava. The lava turned into a red river. the vortex continued to move and make popping noises. Ha ha. Jiang Yuochen, now you see the difference between the Heaven Realm warriors who have the martial soul and those who haven't. I can move the heaven and earth spiritual chi through the martial soul. I am a martial arts legend, and you are just a little brat. You'll die like a dog if you fight against me. The Square Commandery Prince laughed wildly, believing that he was sure to win. The power of martial soul couldn't be stopped by warriors who didn't have martial soul. You can use the power of martial soul. Do you think I cannot? Jiang Yuochen also released his martial soul. A shadow hung over his head and started to mobilize the heaven and earth spiritual chi. What's more, Jiang Yuochen's martial soul even stole the spiritual chi from the Square Commandery Prince's martial soul. The Square Commandery Prince's face changed color greatly. He thought to himself, how can this be? You've just reached the heaven realm. There's no way for you to have martial soul as well. The Square Commandery Prince had practiced 30 years in the heaven realm to get his martial soul. But Jiang Yuochen had just reached the heaven realm, so theoretically, he just could not have the martial soul. Besides, Jiang Yuochen's martial soul was even more powerful than his. Seeing Jiang Yuochen releasing his martial soul, Jiang Tangai was almost out of his mind with envy. He thought, Jiang Yuochen has got the martial soul. It can't be. Is the gap between us this big? Jiang Tangai had always been called the top genius, so he was very proud and looked down on everyone, including those warriors who had higher cultivation. But now, his pride and confidence were completely smashed by Jiang Yuochen. His talent and Jiang Yuochen's talent were like a firefly and a star. He was not even qualified to lick Jiang Yuochen's shoes.